So welcome back to the channel and welcome to a new video. In today's video I want to talk to you about lenses. I don't do much product reviews or things, and I don't like to go into all those tech details, but I do like to share my experience on what I use and why I use it. As most of you know, and as you probably seen in other videos, I own a lot of lenses, and I don't own all of them. I still don't own the big white one here, but I have this one on loan from OM System quite some time already. So yeah, quite happy with that. But I have a sort of a standard kit that I always bring with me. And some lenses come with me on every trip, and some lenses never even leave the house. Well, for example, this 12-100 actually only goes out on family time. Or when I want to travel extremely light, then I usually take it with the 100-400 and the 12-100. I have a lot of focal range to cover. So that's two lenses that I have for that purpose. But recently they don't come out of my bag that much. Just like the 300mm f4, an amazing lens. But while I'm having the 150-400 on loan, there's not much use for this one if I look at it, and I think they're almost the same weight, but this is much more flexible than the 300mm. So this has gone out of my bag and only comes out on these rare occasions at the moment. The 45mm 1.2, I never use this thing, but what's left here, you can see it from this side, a couple of lenses. I have the 12-40 2.8 on my On1 Mark II here at the moment, the 60mm macro, the 7-14mm f2.8, the 150-400 f4.5, and this one, the 40-150 f2.8. And I always say to you that I don't have a specific favorite lens or anything, and let me turn you down a little bit. I think this is a little bit better. But if someone puts a gun to my head today and says you can only take one of these lenses that you own, I would go for this one. Why is that? The way I like to photograph, I like to search for those minimalist shots where I can leave out all the distracting parts of a specific shot. And with this focal range, and I know some people seem to struggle with it, but from 40-150, so we're talking about an 8300 full frame equivalent f2.8 lens. It is absolutely amazing. So yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about this specific lens and why this lens. There is another one, and I don't own this. I just picked it up this afternoon from OM System, and there's a lot of questions about why I'm not using the 40-150 f4. So this is the same focal range as this 2.8 Pro. They're both Pro lenses, both weather sealed, the same focal range. The only difference is this is an f4 lens and this is an f2.8. And look at the size difference here. Well, to be honest, I have to get the sun hood off, and you can see the size difference. You know, there is a massive size difference between the two, and there's also a little weight difference. This one is a little bit more heavy, not that much, but to be honest, this feels like a quality product, while this it's still the same material as this one, but it just feels a little bit cheaper or a little bit more unstable. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just a feel. So it's the same materials, but it just doesn't feel that that rugged as the 2.8 version. So I am going to test the f4 over the next couple of weeks. So I will cover the difference between those two in a different video. But why am I so in love with this lens? Like I said, I like to leave things out of my images. I like to have clean images. I like to leave all those distracting parts away. And I think if I would have lived in, for example, a mountainous area or an area with a lot of waterfalls or stuff like that, I would probably go for more of a wide angle, like the 12-40 or the 7-14, maybe the 8-25. I don't even have the 8-25. I never owned it, never used it. So, but there are a lot of good things about it that are here. But in an area like the Netherlands, which is flat with lots of disturbing parts, and where it's more about, to me, it's more about catching that atmosphere, that moody atmosphere that I like in my images. That's when this comes in really, really handy. And I often even use longer focal ranges like I can produce with the 150-400, which of course people always say is a wildlife lens. Well, I think I've shown on this channel that it does an excellent job in landscape photography, but to be honest, you can also use the 100-400 for landscapes, but the 150-400 is just a little bit sharper, easier to use. The stabilization is just out of this world, but that's what I use, but that's for a different video. So, but this focal range is just absolutely amazing. And another thing that I actually noticed about the 150-400, this zooms completely internally. So there's nothing coming in and out of this lens when you zoom. And if you compare it to the 40-150 here, the F4 version, you can see that there is a part coming out of the lens. Now it's quite light and small, so that's not a big problem. But it's just really nice about this 40-150. I actually bought this lens secondhand about maybe 6-7 years ago, I think. Back then I was using the Em5 Mark I, so the original Em1, and someone sold this lens, which I think normally has a retail price of 13 or 1400 euros, and someone sold this almost brand new in a box with an Em1 attached to it, including 2 batteries, for 1100 euros back then. And I saw it on the marketplace and I thought, whoa, that is a good deal. So I picked it up, sold the Em1 for I think 450 euros. So this thing in almost new condition actually costed me about 650 euros, which is an absolute bargain for the amount of fun that I'm having with it. And it's coming along with me for all this time now. And I think this is one of the only lenses that I think it's never left the bag. You know, I exchanged the 150-400. Sometimes I leave the 12-40 home and take the 12-100. The 7-14 disappears sometimes when I want to reduce some weight. I hardly ever use the 7-14. But this thing is always in the bag, no matter where I'm going. Usually, I always have this one with me, and there's just something magical to it. The glass, the sharpness, it's razor sharp. It's not that sensitive to flare or distortion or diffraction. I hardly ever see it on this thing. It's just magnificent. There are, of course, a couple of cons about this lens. If you talk about things that I would like to see changed if they ever going to make an upgrade for this model, well, I think if they stabilize the 12-100, they should stabilize this lens also. This lens in combination with the body, it would be perfect for some handheld photography. I would love to see this with stabilization. And the foot, you can see it here. There is a tripod collar here connected to the lens, and I have a plate here, a tripod plate attached to it. And why is that? There is no Acra Swiss compatible foot underneath this lens, and I've seen people mounting different tripod collars here on the lens, but I didn't do that myself, so I just attached a plate. But I would love to see if OM System, if they ever are going to make a Mark II of this lens. You can see you can release it, so you can exchange it instead of some other lenses where you can't. But with the 40-150 you can detach it, so you can also take it like this and just do all this handheld shooting. But I like to use it with this collar on it. But yeah, it would be really nice if they put some Aka Swiss compatible shoes on it, so you don't need those plates anymore. That would really be very helpful in the field. A second thing that they have to improve, the sun hood on this lens. I haven't had much problems with it myself, but I've seen a lot of people during fairs that have tape over this, or don't use this. They have a different cap from a different brand on it, so it's not a detachable one or one that you just can shovel in. It's just a hard one on top. I just don't have much problem with this one, but somehow these balls that make this sliding mechanism seem to detach from the lens hood, and it just falls apart. So that's something to be careful for if you're interested in buying this one second hand or anything. But yeah, no, I'm not that easy on my equipment, you know. I'm not a kind of guy that doesn't switch lenses. I need to use this stuff, so, and I use it brutally sometimes, you know. When I'm in a hurry, I just throw something in a bag or something. I should be much more careful on my equipment, but you know, in the heat of the moment, I sometimes lose control and then switch quickly and put this in my pocket, and then when I start walking around, it falls out of my pocket. Yeah, you know how that things go. And what I often do, and that's maybe one of the stupidest things that I can do. Let's have a look. I'll attach it here. I sometimes put this in the pocket of my pants, so I'm just standing there and I'm just hanging it like this, and I'm taking the image. So I switch to a different lens, and then I'm hanging this on myself, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna detach it later, but then I forget it and start walking and it falls on the ground. So this thing has been in and over, falling on the ground. It's been knocked apart, but still it works. It still works. So I'm kind of surprised about that. Maybe yeah, some people are even more rough on it, but yeah, let's see. I bet you that within the next month this thing is going to fall apart after this video, so I'm probably jinxing it. So Dutch custom, you know, you have to knock it off if you don't want to jinx anything. But that's about the three things that I would wish for if they are ever going to upgrade this lens. So yeah, and yeah, you've probably seen a couple of images here during this video come along, and I just love it. I love everything about this lens, and also the 2.8 makes it very easy for evening photography. So if you want to go for star photography, then the 2.8 is of course very good, but the focal range is a bit narrow, you know. It's a tight gap that you're looking through into the stars with the 40-150. I would much rather go for this 7-14 2.8, the 12-40 2.8, or the 12 2.0 that I'm filming on this camera. That's also one of those lenses that rarely leaves my house. It's the only lens that I use when I'm recording here in the studio, or when I'm down in my living room recording some videos. That's the lens I always use for video recordings. So yeah, this lens for landscapes, amazing, but also for birds, because it's an 80-300 equivalent. It's actually quite a nice lens to use for bird or wildlife photography. You can also attach the teleconverters here, the 1.4 and the 2.0. Of course, if you attach the 2.0, this becomes a f5.6 lens, so you need a little bit more light, and the background isn't as blurry as you would expect of a 2.8 lens. But it does work, it does work. And if you put the 2x converter on it, look at the size of this lens, and then realize that it's an equivalent of a 160-600 millimeter lens in this tiny thing if you use the teleconverter. So there is so much opportunities, and I know a lot of people that use this lens with a teleconverter above the 100-400, which I think is a great lens, but they prefer this one. I don't know, I think it's kind of the same, but I always have this feeling that I would rather use a lens in its own focal range than use a different lens with a teleconverter. Somehow I always have the idea that teleconverters use a little bit of that sharpness. So that's something to consider when you want to buy this. So you can do bird photography with this one with a teleconverter. It wouldn't be my preferred choice, but you can do it. If you just want to own one lens that's suitable for landscapes, has a bit of a wider angle than the 100 to 400, then this could be your go-to lens. So yeah, over the next couple of weeks I am going to leave this one at home and I am going to try this f4 lens, this f4 version, and it really feels like a toy if you compare it to this one, you know. But yeah, I'm going to try it and going to see if this is an idea, if this is something that I would exchange. You know, f2.8 for me as a landscape photographer, I rarely shoot an image on f2.8. I usually the minimum starts at 6.4. Usually most of them are f8 to f11 in that part and even higher. So it doesn't really matter for me if I'm using an f2.8 or an f4 lens. So I'm really going to look if there is any difference between those two lenses that I would like to that I'm interested in. I'm actually noticing now that there's also not a clutch mechanism on the 40 to 150 f4, which you can slide between manual and autofocus. So that's quite a negative. I didn't know that. I'm just finding it out right now as we are speaking to each other. So yeah, I'm definitely keen on seeing how this one functions. But once again, this is a marvelous piece of equipment and absolutely worth every penny I invested in it. And even at the full price, if you want to buy it new, I think it's absolutely worth it. And if you look at buying, for example, the 150 to 400 over here, so the big wide, this one stops at 150, this one begins at 150. So it's a real nice addition to your kit. If you also have the 12 to 40, yeah, then this is your go-to lens. And I'm actually considering of buying an 8 to 25 sometimes. So I'm only having 825, this beast, the big wide one. So that's 3 lenses that I have to take to cover almost everything from 12 to 400 millimeters. Sorry, 8 to 400 millimeters. And I think that's just amazing. There's just a little gap from 25 to 40. But when I look at my images, I rarely photograph in that area. So I'm using 12 millimeter to 20 a lot, 40 and upwards, but there are not many images that I shoot in the range of 25 to 40 millimeters. So and why that is, I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea. But yeah, that's something that I'm considering, just to lose a little bit of weight so I can leave the 7 to 14 at home and just have a kit of 3 lenses and this small macro lens, which actually weighs nothing and is very small. So I will always take this one with me. And that's also one of the reasons why I didn't purchase the 90 millimeter. Macro is something I only do when I don't find anything else to photograph. So if there's nothing in the landscape, if there's no animals to photograph, then I start looking at this thing. And even when I'm looking at macro things these days, I often just use big wide here at 500 millimeters, you know, a minimal focal range of, I think, I don't have to lie here, 1.3 meters. 1.3 meters with a 500 millimeter lens. You know, you can do magnificent macro shots with that one. So it's just a bit of laziness sometimes that I'm not putting this one on myself. So yeah, that's the thought that I'm going to. But this lens, the 40 to 150 f4, has to do really good to get my mind off this one. So definitely worth every penny. And in a couple of weeks I will show you a video where I've used this lens, and hopefully yeah, I can give a real verdict of what I would do, what I prefer to take along in future trips. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, about this lens. I hope you liked this video. If you found it useful, yeah, please consider pushing a like button on this video, and there's also a subscribe button underneath here. Another marvelous trip coming up this Sunday, and of course the review video of the 40-150 F4 compared to this one in a couple of weeks time when I've used it and tested it to the fullest. So yeah, this is it. Hope to see you on the next one. There is a buy me a coffee link up here if you want to support the channel, or there are still 2025 calendars left in stock at the moment. All the pre-orders have left my house right now, so yeah, the rest that is still here is stock for selling in the normal sale. So if you want to support the channel and want a beautiful nice calendar in your home for next year, please consider buying the 2025 calendar. Every image in it is taken by myself. The whole calendar is designed by myself, and there are QR codes on the calendar. Every image has its own QR code. If you scan it, you will automatically go to the YouTube video where I shot that video on location. So you can see how I did it, what equipment I used, and you will see that there are a lot of images in there that are actually shot with this one, the 40-150 f2.8. So hope to see you next time. Bye bye.